Hey everyone, it's Doug Green, and I'm the publisher of Technology Reseller News, and we are back with Pots and Shots, our exploration of the best tequilas in the world, and also our examination of the urgent crisis, really, to do some pots replacement, a great opportunity for all the partners out there. And I'm back with my good friend, Jake Jacoby of TELCLOUD. Jake, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks, Doug. Good to see you.
So today we're going to be talking about scoping the scene, why site surveys matter in POTS replacement. So let's jump right into that. So first of all, what is a site survey?
Yeah, so good question. So POTS lines have been delivered traditionally. Traditional POTS lines are delivered to what's called a demarc. So the copper runs into the building, and that's where they basically punch them down, and that's where they deliver the service. So it's typically in this telco room within the customer's building, and that POTS line is delivered. It gives you a tip and ring and dial tone. Well, the reason that a site survey is important is because POTS line replacement or next generation POTS lines use cellular connectivity as one of their backhauls, right? And it's a requirement in life and safety. So, and the reason it's a requirement is because when the power goes out in the building, the connectivity in that POTS line still needs to work. So you have to control that independent connection. You have to make sure that it's still working. A traditional POTS line carried power with it. So when the power went out in the building, that POTS line still had power. So now when the POTS line replacement space, our solution needs to carry that power as well. That's why you need the battery backup, and it needs to deliver that dial tone even when the power goes out. Okay, that said, these lines POTS line replacement is typically installed where that demarc was. Now, what does that mean? That demarc, like we talked in our last podcast, could be in a telco closet, underground, 3 floors down, no cellular signal. So the reason that it's important to do a site survey is to go out, one, identify where is this closet? Where are we going to be installing? Do we have room to install that? Do we have a backboard that we can install our equipment? 2, do we have power, right? Even our solution works on battery. It still needs power to charge the battery, to charge the solution. And then 3, do we have cellular signal there? So understanding those aspects on will we have a successful install are very important. And then secondly, what lines are already there, right? What are we replacing? So understanding, okay, we have 4 lines. What are they used for? Where are they? Because once you install the solution, you need to bring unhook the old POTS line and punch it down to the new POTS line so that you can do the cutover of service. So that's why, being prepped. And now sometimes when your customers already have all this information, they know how many lines, they know where it's going and things like that. But, POTS lines have been out there for a very long time and they've traditionally just worked. So when you go to assess this, right, the customer doesn't always know, right? So that's why we really want to do that site survey. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you go out there first and then have a second trip. Sometimes you can combine the trip, and the first part of it is just the assessment, and the second part is the installation, right? But you always want to do that assessment.
So, Jake, this sounds like one of those things where it's very easy to forget a step and then really mess up and not even know the step you missed.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting. You would assume, and again, if you weren't in this business, that it sounds pretty simple. Like I just ship a box out, I hook it up, and I plug in my phone lines. So there's a lot of nuance to this, and that's one of the reasons that we have several different vendors and fleets of professional telecommunication installers. Right? They have a scope of work, they follow a procedure, and they go down and they make sure that it's professionally installed. These are typically life safety lines. So you really don't want to do this yourself, right? It's not a home phone where I just plug it in. If it works, it works. If not, I can move it around. These are important, right? So it's fire alarms, elevators, life safety. So that's why you do want to have professionals do this. I mean, we've had instances where, somebody went in and didn't really know what they were doing. They installed it. They plugged the power into the outlet. Great. Everything seems to be working. They left the room and turned off the light, because they were done working, and that light was tied to that switch. And now they just turned off the power. Right. So, just things like that, having permanent power, making sure that you know what you're doing. And that's, what these professional installers for. And so TELCLOUD facilitates that, right? We can either train our resellers when they have their own installation fleet so that they have a scope of work and a checklist, and they go and make sure that it's all done correctly. Or we have outside third-party installers that are certified and can do this work. So.
And Jake, before we move on, I am observing that again and again throughout our podcast today, you keep on talking about power. That must be very significant.
It is. So battery backup and power. And again, it's one of the primary reasons that POTS lines were around. POTS lines, traditionally, they carry their own power. The power comes from the POP, the CO, right? So that's the beauty of it, right? And that's why they were allowed to be used for emergency lines. So when you don't have that anymore, and especially in an emergency, again, if the power goes out, the elevator stops, now you're stuck,
right?
That line needs to work, right? And so that's all part of the compliance and the scope of, any of the vendors out there, including TELCLOUD. We all provide the power to that line to make sure that that works in case of emergency.
And before we move on, very recently for this podcast, the world's busiest airport, Heathrow, literally the lights went out. Right. So we have no way of knowing how the emergency service is operated, but it can happen at even something that is bulletproof as that. You can lose power.
Yeah. Hospital systems have generators, but still this is, these are important, essential services. And so that, we take it seriously. It's important. It's life safety. So.
Well, now this is this is the Pots and Shots series. So having taken care of serious business, life-saving communication, and so on, the better part of life, of course, is the Pots and Shots part. We are doing a world tour of the best tequilas in the world. So, Jake, what do you have for us today?
So today we're going to take a little bit of a spin on it. So I'm going to introduce it's still a tequila, but it's called mezcal. So this one is actually, you can see this. It says 400 conejos. It's really in Spanish. My Spanish isn't that great, but 400 conejos, which means 400 rabbits. And I'll talk to you about that in a sec. But first, what I want to tell you is that it is mezcal. So the difference, you've got tequila and you have mezcal. So one thing to note is that every tequila is mezcal, but not every mezcal is tequila. And so there's a nuance to that. So the difference is the way that it is produced. So a tequila uses a conventional oven, and it's always blue agave. So the agave plant. Now with a mezcal, there's other types of agave plants, right? Not necessarily just blue agave, but the blue agave is for the tequila. Now, and then, so the way that they make mezcal is they take these other agave plants, and they don't necessarily have to come from Jalisco, right? We talked about last time, tequila comes from Jalisco in Mexico, in the town of Tequila or that area. This can come from other regions. And so it says Oaxaca is a big place where they make mezcal. So what they do is they cook the plant, the agave, in these like pits, so like coal pits and things like that. So when you have a mezcal, it is got this very smoky flavor to it. It's really interesting. Some people don't like it, right? And some are very light and some are very heavy in the smoke. Sometimes it's good to mix it, but one of my engineers, this is his favorite. So it's called, let's see, I put it right here. So
let me give a close up.
400 conejos, and I looked this up, so I'm going to read here. It translates to 400 rabbits, and under Aztec mythology, 400 rabbits, or the 400 rabbit gods, represent many spirits of intoxication. So again, don't drink too much of it, but it's very good mezcal. And my notes here say, okay, tequila is blue agave, industrial method, smoother taste. Mezcal, many different agaves, pit roasted, and a smokier flavor. So if you see them out there, this is a great one. And now we know a little bit more about mezcal and tequila.
Well, Jake, as ever, this is most fascinating. We get an education on the shots. We also get an education on pots. I hope everybody's enjoying this series. This is a tremendous opportunity for the reseller partner community. There's a huge number of sites that need to be transitioned. Each segment of this is important. I hope everyone joins us for all of them. Our next session, we're going to be talking about future-proofing telecom, the long-term sustainability of POTS replacement. So that's going to be great. Don't miss it. But for now, Jake, I want to thank you again for joining me today and giving us a tour also of the best tequilas in the world.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. See you next time.